It's Lou Paints, and I'm that miniature painting coach. My hair is a mess these few days because it's just been a lot to do around the house. Now, this is my own miniature painting vlog where I improve my own skills by challenging myself with things that are new and I'm not used to. And with this Bretonnian Sorceress over here, what we're practicing is we're working on her to get to a level where we can really express the paints underneath and then bring those tiny little color changes like that on her belly. Okay, we're gonna zoom over here so you guys can see it, and we can make those changes in a way where it takes a step by step and it changes a little bit along the way. Now, all right, so first off, if you're new to the video of the way I do things, we have my list of brushes and paints down here. We have my color chroma reference up here, and then I have the reference for the light and shadows down here, and I am painting using this as a light and shadow reference, which is the Dawn Glare Invoker, which is a white Magic the Gathering card. Let's just kind of place that aside, and this camera off to the side is where you can kind of see how my hands move. Alright, so let's get back to continue painting this thing. I can't wait. So I've been getting a lot of interesting interactions from people on Facebook recently, because I'm at a stage where I'm still doing these vlogs entirely new, and so you know, with these vlogs I just kind of talk a little bit about painting and maybe about the obstacles and the solutions that I overcome. So not just in painting, but on my miniature painting journey, because I come from a place where I am a Southeast Asian. I'm from Malaysia, and I have not been miniature painting since 2013, and I only really came onto the internet to really get to know the community as of several months ago. And I mean, like several months ago, like only at the beginning of August. And for the most part, I didn't quite started creating content until the beginning of the end of October or the beginning of November. So if you're watching this video, you're probably you can check on the stamp at the bottom to see how early on, like I actually started all this or uploaded this video. But that's actually how early it's been, and it's kind of weird how fast things are moving, because I didn't imagine like at the rate where I start talking to people, I would actually get to know the artists that I admire real quick and get some really good help from them. And some direction, and have an idea about how they approach and what their perspectives are in art as well, and to kind of get into the community right away and figuring out like, oh, these are what most people think, right? And it really dawned on me that a lot of people from the miniature painting scene, they are not aware of what the rest of the art world has to offer. And so where I'm coming from the direction of somebody who's growing myself as a miniature painter, and when it comes to like dry brushing, getting armies done and all that, I can pretty much already do that because I have a airbrush of my own. I can paint at a better ready standard, but that's not the goal. My goal is to compete with the people in the space where people are painting miniatures that look really good and stand out in my own way. So like, it's gonna be just my own art style, not anybody else's. So I'm coming from a place where I'm trying to identify and keep my own perspective on things, my own unique perspective, coming as an Asian from the Asian art schooling and bring that over to miniature painting. So there's a lot of things that I don't quite know how it's done yet, or the vocabulary that comes with miniature painting, so I'm figuring all of that out. Now we're over here, which just kind of going over through the colors and desaturating and working parts of those colors in, so that we can really tone down and get those parts of the miniature to really sign up. So like, for example, this black here, and after we do that black, we're gonna wash it out a little bit so that it's not too prominent. Push it up. There we go. We're gonna come back to it later, because I think in the last episode I said I was gonna handle this darkness, and I really do want to do that. But we're gonna need some magenta, and So I have my palette here. Let's zoom out for a second. We're gonna take the little brush I have over here, and then we're gonna pop it like this and drop it over here and just kind of pull it in. I'm gonna take that, not to waste it. And like I'm really frugal about the paints that I have. I try not to waste as much as I can. So I am going to drop some magenta over, and it's going to be the same quinacridone magenta that I have from Golden. And we actually used up quite a lot in the basing and building up of this model. So we're just gonna draw a little bit around there, and so we have just enough, because that's a really strong color pigment and it tends to take over all the color pigments. So as a paint, it's a pretty interesting thing to play around with. All right, so let's just go ahead and take our brush and really identify what is it that we want to structure over here. We have this part that's a little bit too have too much magenta on it, not enough green. We need to identify our terminator, which is the darkest point of the light changes. You'll see what I mean after I get this part painted. There's going to be a bit of teal, so we're going to take out teal, and then we're going to go at it very slowly. Okay, kind of like this. Hope you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. Just kind of outlining a tad bit, just get a shape, because it's a shape that we want. I don't really need the to highlight everything because it's in the dark, but I want to make sure I get the spots in there where it's just nice and just noticeable enough. Okay, keep going like so. We'll correct our lights and shadows afterwards, but right now we just want to get the shape of those creases at this stage, around here. Okay, so we're gonna put a little bit more. Boop, 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 boop. Boop. Okay. Okay. And then we're going to add this teal at the bottom here so that there's annotations of it. Over here as well. We want to make sure we get this this whole chest area a lot more cleaner, a lot more smoother too, because later on when we want to add the patterns on around her collar, we need to make sure that all these parts are pretty clean. So just keep going. Okay, smoothing out. We need to keep going and smoothing out over here. Like this. So now we can be a bit more daring. So I have my paintbrush, you can see. Hopefully it's not too secured, because this part of it has way too much satin. So the camera is not picking up those colors as well as I would have hoped. But it's something that we can afford doing, and so we're gonna keep doing it. We're not making it too complicated. Okay, so now we have that shape. Now what does that mean? Well, we're gonna take our magenta, reason why we even had magenta to begin with, and just kind of work at that magenta like so, and darken it through the crevices like this, so that we get that nice little shape in between. Now I guess some of you guys are like thinking, why is it that he didn't just like do that at the beginning? Would it have saved time? No, it's not the same. because you don't have the, first of all, you don't have the undercoat for those layers to shine through. And maybe as a miniature painter, some of these colors, when most people might not see them, because I mean they're so subtle, the changes, and most people don't have the color sensitivity. And I didn't realize that until a few years ago when my I took a color sensitivity test to see how well I was in, like, how far was I in color blindness to being able to tell what colors are actually true. And so it's a test where they give you like a whole spectrum of reds. You need to be able to identify which reds are much more green, which reds are much more blue, things like that. And the changes are really tiny. And apparently, I mean, not surprising, most people who have already painted or have done art for a really long while are able to tell those colors, right? So, I mean, unless you genuinely are a little bit colorblind. Now, what does that mean? It basically means that in terms of recognizing color, as far as judges go, and in color preference, everybody is just kind of stuck in this world where they themselves can see, because these are colors that only they themselves can perceive. And so where I come from, I have these colors that I can see and I can't get rid of my head, because it seems like it's a perfect imperfection if I don't get it to the right set of colors. So when I do this layering and I put that colors on the top, it tells me that it's making me feel more comfortable about the way my colors are coming together, because it doesn't feel like it's ingenuine or not believable. And that's the best way I can describe it. I mean, how else can we? Because we're all human beings and we have our own perception. And we're kind of stuck with that perception, especially to do with color. So the red that you see and the red that I see are going to be vastly different. And we can only really do our best in being able to communicate these colors using words, but and pictures. And hopefully we can keep showing ourselves different changes in colors of grays and bright colors, so that more people can appreciate the different colors eventually over time, because it requires practice. But the truth is that most people are going to look at Tabletop Ready or something, and they are just going to be happy with that. Like, there is a level of appreciation where it falls off from being able to do something that is, well, I mean, really good artwork. Otherwise, there wouldn't be people who I mean, there are lots of people who may be able to collect artwork, but only specific people are drawn into doing that, because there's just certain things that they see about that artwork, particularly to do with, especially when it comes to the realm of colors. Only very specific people can are so far ahead even than like artists, being able to appreciate what most artists are able to do in with their small color changes. And just kind of me going through the small color changes as well. So it's gonna be a little bit. I'm gonna bring this darkness back up to gray, but we're gonna make sure that we are still working on this chest torso area. It's just that I want to make sure that I got the right colors from the torso to the bottom, because that this teal is going to be a small little undercoat. So now you see I'm kind of like putting on this paint so we can bring up that darkness enough, just enough, right? Not a lot, just enough. And then just gonna take this black, pop it in so we can make it gray with it real slowly, and then we get this nice gradient that kind of shows through. And now you see on the top here it's a little bit brown, and that's because there's not enough teal in it. There's enough greens in it, right? So we will add that green over here, and then we are going to blend it out in the rest really softly. Okay, now for me, because I come from drawing and working on canvases, painting on something this small is actually the more challenging part when it comes to blends, because I'm not used to thinning paints down to a point where it's it makes the blends sufficiently soft enough on a miniature. Because on canvases, the only time you really blend something this soft is if you're trying to paint something that's on the realistic side with many soft color changes, skin or metal in particular, because skin and metal is always the more challenging parts when it comes to painting anything. But essentially, when I started painting miniatures, I really enjoyed that, because when you paint on a canvas, you focus on painting as a whole, which is the reason why you guys tend to see me as I paint on the overall first. Like, I don't paint like just one part of the picture, one part of the miniature. This is because I've already been trained, and in fact, you get punished in school at times for not following the rule of making sure that the overall is the same color, because it takes a lot of as a student, while you're still learning anything, it's always encouraged that you blend everything out as a whole, so you get an idea of what you're looking at. Because when you see, what happens is that with certain artists, especially when they're learning, they see the painters that are really good, that have already been painting the same thing for a long time, and so they see them paint like the face first before doing anything of the rest of the mold, and it's done to completion. They're like, okay, well, I'm gonna learn to do that as well, and they begin doing that at the learning stage, at their own learning stage, and you end up wasting more time, and you end up learning slower, because and I'm saying this literally as from a place where I've had many teachers like dump this on me, in that if you when you're in the learning stage, if you're not doing it from the overall, you will get tunnel vision when you work on details. And that tunnel visioning is not going to allow you to be able to identify the colors and the lighting that's correct for the entire miniature, or the entire canvas, or entire artwork, or anything that you're painting, a sculpture. And this is true because, I mean, everybody, all human perception, when we focus on one thing, when we point at one thing and really focus down on it, our perception really changes. And so why doesn't it affect like miniature painters who've been doing it for a while? Well, because they're painting something that they're already comfortable with. They've already been doing it many times. And so in order to speed up the process, they're choosing to paint, I mean, it's one of the methods of speeding up the process. They're choosing to paint only one part of the miniature at a time. So let's say only the skin, and then they finish that, and they move on to the hair, and they finish that to most completion. They still go back and touch it up, but some of the miniature painters who are able to do that, they've been doing that for a while, and it's not the first time they do that. So there are some things where you might not have seen, or you don't know the full story yet. So it's not a great idea to come to the assumption of somebody else's painting process until you have had talked to them for quite a bit. Now, there are painters out there, I'm not saying this rule applies to everybody, there are painters out there who generally work one place up to completion, and it's because it's the way they learn, it's the way they have always been doing it. I'm just saying that in terms of a reduction in time, it's probably more likely for most people to go ahead and work on the overall first, right, rather than the tiny little bits. So you see what I'm doing over here is that I'm kind of defining the small little changes in the cloth, right? And you see, I didn't do this at the beginning of the of me exploring the colors on this thing. I didn't, because it just wasn't a good investment for me, because I'm experimenting with something new. I'm not used to the light and shadows on how this thing would otherwise behave. And if I had done that, well, I wouldn't be able to plot on so many colors and work with and keep it consistent throughout the model. Things cut out for a moment there, because I had called for a delivery boy to send me some food, and they just kind of like went on this phone, and they just kind of stopped the video. So let's just go back to what we're painting. So we're painting the dark side of this miniature, and we're making sure to kind of loom onto that darkness. And so how are we going to make this part a little bit more dark than the rest of it? Well, the light and shadows are one thing, but we really need to really dense out that darkness. This is going to be our challenge. The challenge isn't painting what's bright on this model. The challenge is going to be painting what's dark on this model. So we're going to continue off from where we were, and we're going to make it just a little bit more dark over here, and so we can get the blends how we want, and really thin down those parts that's really way too bright of a teal. And we're just kind of gonna plop on that black like so, and then we're gonna work it in tiny little steps. Okay, and we want to make sure to keep that shape that we've already kind of like assembled. So we're just gonna make sure to take small little steps at the edges and corners. So I'm just gonna make sure so I'm working with a smaller brush. You guys can see, and the reason for that is because in pretty much this whole time it's because we're just kind of making sure the colors are really soft. Okay, so let's just kind of darken this out a little bit. There we go. Go with it a little bit more. Soften it. Soften it. Okay. And we're going like this, and then we're going to also add on a little bit of black towards here. See how that goes, and we're gonna add just a little bit of teal, but we will also add a little bit of black to the terminator points. And then we're going to add the skin color in this way. Soften it out. Okay, and we're also gonna make sure we add that magenta because there's a loss of a lot of that darkness that we wanted. Over here, over here, over here, and we're gonna take it slow and being able to blend it out. But it's actually coming along pretty nicely. I like this. Okay. Okay. So I am planning to put this miniature for criticism under Richard Gray. So I'll be sending it to him and see what he says after I've done for the most part this miniature almost done. And I'll be sending it to Vincent Venturella as well for the November Painters Motivating Painters to see what he thinks as well. So I can't wait for that, and I gotta make sure I complete this whole Bretonnian Sorceress playlist. So this I have like I'm having a really fun time with just like experimenting and seeing how people react, because I posted some photography exercises that I did on the Facebook group, and I found that the opinions of what people say are still great. And because David Cole has been telling me like how to take better photographs of this thing, and it's been helping out a lot. So I was able to see a lot more flaws, and for me, being able to see the flaws is important because later on when I've painted this miniature up to where I'm mostly satisfied with, taking a photograph would not be the same because most of the parts have already been smoothed out. So right now the sharpness, all those flaws in the color changes being a bit too harsh is actually guiding me more than anything, and able to take a better photograph, so that I'm trying to actually see as much flaws as possible in my painting. So just kind of douse this a little bit to here, and we just make a small little triangle like this, and we're gonna make a smaller triangle up there. Okay, so now we're going to take this and then we're gonna blend out this shape. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. keep going. And we don't have that much time left in the video. Kinda sad. Oh, let's keep going. Take a bit more black. You can see the black is really potent. This is an ivory black from Winsor Newton from a heavy body acrylic tube. So I need to be just kind of gentle with the black, like so. And it's no worries because later on I'm going to actually pop back out the highlights. It's just that right now I do want the shadows to be exaggerated on this miniature, at least on the parts that's like you know, folds. Okay, so we're gonna check back here to see how is it doing, and it seems to be doing okay. We can see that some of those parts are maybe a little bit too shiny, because this over here is supposed to be a lot more darker. And so we will thin back that down to dark, and the way we'll do it is add just a little bit of the brown that we've kind of mixed in from our inks. And the one thing about inks that I don't quite like working with is because they drop so fast on our palette, wet or not. So just kind of like going through it really softly. So we have that nice little gradient. We can go at it a little bit more harshly. There we go. There we go. So now we have that shape popping up that we didn't have exactly before. And we want to make sure that the top is going to be a lot more brighter than that, because it actually is able to see the light that bounces off here. So we're gonna pop that up. Here is how it should be. We can see there's an immediate change, and we're gonna let that rest. We're gonna just kind of even it out, the blend, in such a way, and then we're gonna pop it over here, and we're actually gonna take a little bit more, and that's pretty thick, kind of like this. I have this much on my brush, and I'm going to pop it on this portion so you guys can see it. Bing, bing, shiny, bing, bing. There we go. And now we're gonna go at it really slow, like this. Okay, over here too, like this. And we can see that we have something that's a lot more opaque now, which is great, right? And we didn't really need to go at it so dense. And I really like this this change, because okay, so let's kind of see how it is from a far point of view. It's okay. That tie is really bothering me, so we should probably focus on that the next time. However, as far as this part goes, I think that part, is it done? It's 70%. Not satisfactory yet. This part definitely needs a lot of work. That tie needs a lot of work. Most of the parts that's, I think, on the edges have not been well defined yet, and then there's this part. Dum dum dum. Horrible. Look, what? This is not how darkness looks like. It's like those base colors that's still there. And I do like the base is showing off the definition. How far is this miniature done? I think it's about like halfway done, like 50% now. 50, or maybe like towards 55 probably is more like it. What we're gonna work on the next episode? Well, we're gonna work on her dress, the bottom of her dress. I think it's the most important part right now. It's this part of the tie, and then this part of the dress here. It needs to make more sense. And then the light, it needs to actually be able to show off on these parts of the dress that are actually on the ground itself, because these parts, they need to actually show up. Okay, now I want to make sure I highlight this, so for those who stuck around to the end of the video, this camera over here, oops, zoom out for a moment, this camera over here, if you guys take notes of my habits of what I've been doing to this brush, they are long-term habits that's been done, to improve and get more secure at your painting. Now, so if you do take note of the small little things that I do, you can incorporate some of them into your building good habits into miniature painting. It won't be too perfect, which is great because you get to see me struggle along the way. That's kind of the point with this vlog. Okay, so Well, remember that you have to learn from others to discover who you yourself really are. All right, so take care.